What's up, everybody? Jensen Cummings here. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. Best Served Podcast 164, Wings and Beer with Jason Murphy of Buffalo Wild Wings. Thank you for being on the show, my friend.
Thanks for having me, Jensen. I appreciate it.
All right. Best Served Fast. This is our channel where we focused on fast casual, multi-unit, ghost kitchen franchise, growth concepts. Clearly, Buffalo Wild Wings fits into that with a nice wrinkle of talking craft beer, which anybody who knows me, beer and food is in my blood. It's the way that I view everything that goes onto the table. And so I'm excited. Jason Murphy is the Beverage Innovation Manager for Buffalo Wild Wings based out of Castle Rock. So give us the quick tour, the Webster's Dictionary definition. Buffalo Wild Wings, for the three people out there who don't know what to expect from a Buffalo Wild Wings. Give us a little bit of a tour.
Yeah, for sure. So we were founded in 1982 by two guys in Columbus, Ohio, who just really wanted to eat some chicken wings, and they couldn't find a place that worked for. Yeah, they couldn't find a place that worked for them, and a very grassroots kind of start. They started off with one building, just slinging wings, and our mantra, Wings, Beer, Sports, is kind of what they were all about back in 1982, which is what everybody wants. Flash forward today to 2020, we operate over 1,200 locations in the country, in all 50 states plus DC. We also operate internationally in Canada, in Mexico, and then in the Middle East. We got a little bit over 1,300 total locations, and Wings, Beer, Sports is still a theme. So, which is cool to be a part of. So, in most recent news, we were purchased by private equity about 2 years ago. And the food and beverage team is brand new to Buffalo Wild Wings. We're headed up by our fearless leader, Jamie Carowin, who is our VP of food and beverage. And he came on board and said, we are going to make Buffalo Wild Wings food damn good. So
right.
I'm pretty excited with what we've done. We've improved the quality of our wings. A lot of people probably think of wings first when they think of Buffalo Wild Wings, but I will tell you, if you haven't tried our all-American cheeseburger yet, I will put our burger up against any burger in the country. It is hands down one of the best burgers you're going to eat. And then we just launched a brisket platform.
Yep.
We got some other cool stuff coming down the pipe, but yeah, our food is definitely, it's turning some heads these days. But then I do beverage. Like, I'm pretty stoked with what we're doing with the beverage program. So I manage all beer. I've got some counterparts who do wine and spirits. We got an awesome new classic cocktail platform. But then, for my forte, it's beer, and we're trying to
a lot about beer.
Yeah, we're trying to do some cool stuff with craft, and make sure we got some good local crafts on. So it's been fun.
A couple things occur to me. One, we're talking about kind of fast casual, multi-unit, kind of that. It's interesting. Columbus, Ohio is like a hotbed for emerging concepts. There's a few cities, Denver and Boulder, you see the Chipotles and the Qdobas and the Quiznos and Noodles and Company. Columbus has quite a few, and there's a few other little pockets. A lot of them were college towns, which was very interesting to me, kind of finding a way to have quality, something thoughtful, innovative, new, exciting, which fits college kids, affordable and fast, which fits college kids. So I'm very fascinated in that. When you said Columbus, Ohio, I was like, yep, makes total sense. I also really, really like being on brand, having very clear and simple pillars. Wings, beer, sports. Because 38 years later, it's still wings, beer, and sports. I think it is so important, and it creates a very simple foundation and bedrock that makes it easy to communicate to your internal guests, your team members, right? And your external guests, those butts and seats. So I'm a big, big believer in everything that you just said. So before we talk a little bit more about wings, beer, and sports, let's take it back a little bit. Jason Murphy, for you, when did you first catch the hospitality bug?
Yeah, the hospitality bug was probably a little bit later. The beer bug is an interesting thing. So
okay, let's go there.
Yeah, so I guess
beer is hospitality, by the way.
Exactly. Okay, cool. So so you could say I've been involved in in some capacity in the beer industry my entire life. So
Does that mean mostly drinking the beer, or you say
yeah, drink all of it, man. So it started. My dad. I grew up in Arvada, Colorado, right outside of Golden, and my dad worked at Coors Brewery for 40 years. And so,
Dad. All right.
yeah, he started when he was 18, retired when he was 58. So shout out to Dad.
Yeah.
But so, yeah, I mean, I was around, I grew up as a kid when like I went to visit my dad in the office. I was literally walking around the halls of the largest single site brewery in the world in Coors and Golden. And so I took it for granted, but I'm sure, that's kind of where things started. So that was pretty cool. But when
Here's a legacy for you. Do you feel that like you are the next generation moving us into the next generation, or maybe you're in the third generation from like what Coors started? I think about this, and I'm totally on a tangent here, but I think it's interesting. Like maybe for us, there was a couple beers. I mean, I remember going across state lines to get Fat Tire. That was like what happened with Coors Original. People were like traveling across the country to go and fill up the back of their Winnebago with as much Coors Banquet as they possibly could. And then fast forward, and then now we have like the next generation of like, what's the hype monster? What are people waiting in line for 2 hours for bottle release? So it's interesting that it kind of started with Coors for you. And do you think about that? I mean, clearly,
all the time. Yeah, I mean, Coors put a roof over my head, right? Like Coors is the reason why I had clothes on my back and all the good things I have growing up. I attribute a lot of that to my dad's hard work ethic, but it was Coors that kind of allowed a lot of that cool stuff to happen. So I grew up with an appreciation not only for the beer industry in general, but for the Coors Brewery, the Coors family, and the Coors products. To this day, I will tell you probably my favorite beer is a Coors Banquet. Like it's just the best. It's a go-to.
Fresh?
Yeah.
As clean and simple and straightforward as it gets. Sometimes they get a little old and they get skunky. You gotta look at that date. It's funny. So what about that though? It's challenging too, because macro versus micro, there's a lot of animosity, there's a lot of infighting there. Do you have to reconcile that? Do you ever have to like qualify that you have so much respect and love for Coors, yet you're still so much on craft, as you mentioned?
I feel sometimes it depends on the conversation you have, but I mean, you read any, I feel like pretty frequently you'll see blogs or articles that have come out asking brewers, what's your favorite beer? And when you talk to brewers and you ask them what they're drinking, they're drinking Coors Banquet. They're going back to those kind of beers. So, when you get into the deep dark pits of craft beer internet and craft beer groups and things like that, you don't bring up Coors Banquet and the good old macros that often. But I feel like as the craft beer community kind of matures and appreciates all styles of beer, there's kind of that reappreciation for what Coors Banquet is, which is not only Coors Banquet, but Coors Light, Miller Lite, Bud Light. The biggest. They're very hard products to produce, and they produce it in the largest of quantities to the same exact flavor and perfection every single time. So while it may not be the most flavorful and innovative thing like a Sierra Nevada Pale Ale, like that was back in the 80s, or some of the stuff you're seeing today with triple dry hopping or now cryo hops, things like that. There's an appreciation for beer at every level because none of it's easy to brew and make it taste good. So
yeah, and consistency is key. If you may not want to drink what's in the bottle of a Bud Light and you're a brewer, you should absolutely be trying to siphon the superpower of being able to recreate exactly the same flavor with an agricultural product and a fermentation process. So yeah, I love having to reconcile because it makes us thoughtful about it. I think you and I came up in a beer time where it was like, what's the biggest, baddest mother that we can get our hands on? And now I'm like, what's that really crushable 5% Pilsner that you have? Because I want one of those, right? So we're simplifying it because maybe we're not, trying as hard or like forcing the issue of just being like, what's just really well-made beer? And so I really appreciate that. When did you then find yourself getting kind of more into the professional side of beer?
Yeah, so there's a couple different steps there. So I would say I really started to gain an appreciation for beer probably like 19, 20, 21. Are you familiar with Old Chicago? The
course.
yeah, so Old Chicago is the World Beer Tour, and I feel like Old Chicago is where a lot of people got introduced to craft beer. Yeah, so that's where a lot of people started to learn how to drink craft beer. I'm gonna say this out loud. I think I'm probably one of very few people who actually completed the World Beer Tour before they turned 21. So thanks to the fake ID, I was able to do that. I'm sorry to anybody who used to serve me at that Old Chicago.
Yeah. Don't try to go to Buffalo Wild Wings.
Yeah.
Fake ID. Yeah.
But so it's funny because that's an interesting part of my story because I actually worked for Old Chicago. And that was my first job out of college for 5 years, was running their beverage program. But I would say, right after I kind of learned to love craft beer, I started serving and bartending at a brew pub called Gordon Biersch, which they're still operating quite a few locations around the country, but I worked at the one in Broomfield, Colorado. And it's a German brew pub. They brew by Reinheitsgebot. Or they did brew by Reinheitsgebot when I started. They've since kind of left that, and now we're brewing all styles. But we're only brewing with those main 4 ingredients: hops, water, yeast, and barley. And
so this is German purity laws for anybody that doesn't know. And actually, originally it was 3 because they didn't even know what yeast was. It was magic, right?
Yeah, exactly. Came out of the sky. Yeah.
Very German, where you can only include those ingredients, so it doesn't allow for adjuncts. There's even a little bit where only certain hop varietals are allowed within that as well. And so so that's a very stringent, but it also created a very classic styles of beer that are still relevant and iconic today. So I appreciate that. And so was this really where you got to interact with brewers, right, where they became kind of part of your cohort and got to work with brewers? What was it like at Gordon Biersch? Who were you working with there?
Yeah, so I got to the privilege of working for a guy named Tom Dargen. He was the head brewer at Gordon Biersch in Broomfield, and pretty well respected within industry circles and brewing circles. He's made a good name for himself, but he just had an insane passion for German beer and brewing beer, and you can tell going back to the conversation we had about making sure every batch is the same every single time. With lagers, there's not a whole lot of room to hide flaws.
That's it.
And for the 4 or 5 years that I worked there when Tom Dargen was head brewer, you wouldn't be able to tell when one batch of Meriton changed to the next one. It was just flawless every single time. So we had 5 year-round staples on tap year-round. We had a Golden Export, which just is a nice golden blonde lager. We had a Czech Pilsner. We had a Meriton. We had a Hefeweizen, which stretches the Reinheitsgebot a little bit. And then we had a Schwarzbier. And those were the 5 beers that we had on year round. So this is right in the height of, or right in the beginning of when craft beer is starting to really kind of become popular among the masses. And we're slinging, these 5 lagers every day and really growing a great appreciation for like how nuanced these beers are and how different flavors can be with only 4 different, main ingredients. And so, I was able to work with Tom as a server and bartender for a while when I was at Gordon Biersch. I was pretty passionate about what was going on with the beer program there. So, I think Tom saw that and he let me come and help pour at some beer festivals for him and do some stuff at Great American Beer Fest. I formed a really good relationship with him. Flash forward a few years later to after I graduated and was looking for my first job out of college. Craftworks Holdings is the company that owns Gordon Biersch, also owns Old Chicago, Rock Bottom, and a few other concepts. They were, hiring. I had the opportunity to, land a job with Old Chicago with Craftworks, and Tom Dargen was now the head brewer for all of Craftworks. So I got to go work with him there in a professional setting outside of I guess it's still in a corporate setting at the offices there. So it was cool to be able to work with him in both different settings and kind of see the passion on both sides. One from slinging a malt bag over your shoulder and carrying that, but then also like all the logistics that goes into running 40 different brew pubs all across the country. So
massive. I love the trajectory because it really resonated with me what you were saying, because I went to culinary school after graduating high school in California. I went to Iowa and culture shock. My uncles owned restaurants, and I went to culinary school in Des Moines, and the beverage instructor was the general manager of the Rock Bottom Brewery, and she took us there, and it's the first time I met a brewer, and like I was just completely struck. I was like, I didn't know humans made beer. Like it was literally like, I just didn't know. I didn't understand. And so I hung out with that brewer. And then the same thing, I was like, where do I get craft beer? And it was Old Chicago Tours. And I always joke, like now, I'm speaking at GABF and a certified Cicerone and blah, blah, blah. But I say like my education started at the rock bottom, literally and figuratively. So get off your high horse because somebody doesn't know what a saison is. Like I'm very passionate about including people rather than saying I'm here, you're not here. What you don't know, what triple dry hop is, where have you been? So
well, it's interesting.
Really important.
Yeah, to that point too, even about Rock Bottom, I feel like still, in some of the geekiest of craft beer circles, places like Rock Bottom get shit on because can I cuss on this podcast? Is that okay? I just did.
Yeah.
So places like Rock Bottom get shit on because they're a chain and they're not as cool as this new brewery that just popped up that's slinging the triple dry hop stuff. I don't think people realize, and this is a very big tangent from what we're talking about, but the lineage of brewers that have come out of Gordon Biersch and Rock Bottom, like a Rock Bottom brewer helped found Surly, and a Rock Bottom brewer helped found Three Floyds, and I think a Gordon Biersch brewer helped found Devil's Backbone. Like there's this huge lineage of brewers who were able to cut their teeth at places like Rock Bottom and Gordon Biersch and a lot other of great chain brew pubs across the country, where they get access to ingredients and equipment, and they're able to learn and perfect their craft, so to speak, and perfect their technique, and then go off to do some amazing things. So that's always something that's irked me, is when I hear people talk bad about a Gordon Biersch or a Rock Bottom because they're a chain. Like go in and try some of these people's beers. Like some of the best beers I've had are coming out of these Rock Bottoms and Gordon Biersches, but because people just have this idea in their head that they're a chain, so obviously they're not going to be good, or they're all going to taste the same, or they're of lesser quality because they skimp on their ingredients or their process or whatever. It's just not true. So to everyone listening,
good people are going to Rock Bottom beer, no matter where they are. I absolutely believe it. And so wherever you find yourself, just remember, we all started somewhere. It's about being inclusive and bringing people on the journey, wherever they're starting or wherever they want to take it. So I love that. Wings, beer, sports. Let's get into it.
Yeah.
Wings and beer. I mean, obviously, iconic, classic, right? Like they go together like wings and beer. And so for you then, where do you find the nuance? Because I don't know, is it easy then? If it's so they're meant for each other, is your job that hard, right? Like, let's get into that. How are you thinking about wings and beer and trying to elevate that platform? Because it seems like such a simple thing and such a delicious thing. What's your approach? What's your philosophy to kind of bringing wings and beer together at the level that you and Buffalo Wild Wings are executing?
Yeah, it's interesting. So, like we said, I took over the program about 3 years ago. And the program that I took over was a largely nationalized program. So most of our tap handles were mandated across the entire country.
Gotcha. There was no regionality within
the
years represented.
Some, but not much. And we allowed some flexibility at the local level, but not a whole lot. And I understand why. We at one point in like 5 or 6 years ago, we were opening a new sports bar every 3 days for about a year and a half. So to have that kind of growth that we had in like the mid 2010s, like 2014, 2015, 2016, you've got to have like a rinse and repeat process where you set it down and you set it down.
You can't go and taste 7 local beers. You don't have time.
Exactly. Yeah. So, but flash forward to where we were when I started. We're still growing as a company. We're still adding new locations, but not at the rate of 3 per day. And I think what we realized is a gap that we had in our lineup was really that localized beer feeling. And so if you think of what a Buffalo Wild Wings is, like we're a national brand, right? And in some sense we compete with, Chili's and Applebee's because I think that vision is in people's heads. But, in our essence, we're a local sports bar. We want you to think of a Buffalo Wild Wings when you want to go out and eat wings and catch the, an Avs game, a Broncos game, a Nuggets game, or, whatever team you follow. So if you think of who our natural competitors are, it's the one-off sports bars that are down the street from you or in everybody's town. So I think that's from a beer perspective, that's one thing that we realized, pretty quickly when I, took over, is that was an opportunity for us to kind of change our mentality and the way we looked at beer. And frankly, that's what we did at Old Chicago in my 4 years there, was, really drive home regionalization and localization. So we did a lot of consumer work, and traveled the country, and met with people and asked them why they visited other sports bars, or what they were looking for in beer, why they didn't visit Buffalo Wild Wings. And one of the things that really struck a chord with me was we took a panel of a group of people who we considered beer experts and experts in the industry, and said, how many taps do you think a Buffalo Wild Wings has? And these are people who know what they're talking about. Like, they know beer. Yeah. And you ask them how many taps a Buffalo Wild Wings has, and the answer was like 12 to 14.
Yep.
And we've got 30, which means, we're not getting credit for those other 16 to 18 beers we have on tap. So the idea really for the last 2 years, since we've been able to implement our new beer strategy, is to do three things really well. One is to have the right mix of domestic, import, and craft. One is to have the right mix of national, regional, and local. But the most important thing to me is to ensure we have the right mix of styles and assortment across 30 tap handles. And the example that I use is, when I first started, I would walk into one of our sports bars that's right up the street from me, and I'd go in and they'd have 30 tap handles, but they'd have 10 pale lagers, 10 IPAs, 5 wheat beers, right, 3 ambers, a stout, cider, and you're done. That's basically 6 beers on 30 taps. And there's an amount of diminishing returns. You can be a burger place and you can have 10 burgers or you can have 20 burgers. The amount of total burgers you're going to sell probably isn't going to change depending on if you have 10 or 20. So let's figure out what those 10 are and do them really well, and use those, remaining spots that you want to train your kitchen staff on or train your bar staff on to add things to your menu that really provide variety and assortment, so that the main overarching thing is we have the right beer for the right guest at the right occasion every single time. And that means make sure we have a sour on tap. Make sure the one thing you brought up a style that I'm very passionate about in my interview. I'm going to curse again, so if you need to bleep this out, I'm sorry. But in my interview with B-Dubs about 3.5.
Come on,
I'm just like cook. I know. All right, cool. Then I won't apologize for it. But in my interview 3.5 years ago, I said all I want to do is eat wings and drink a fucking saison at a Buffalo Wild Wings. Like, that's all I wanted. Like, there's no reason why we can't have a saison on tap. Or at least in bottle or around. So that's the one thing that we've made sure that we do. And the way, I look at it is similarly to a way you would look at a food menu. If you're a restaurant that has 30 handles, you're going to have a number 1 seller, you're going to have a number 30 seller, and you're going to have everything in between. Yep. You're never going to get away from having a number 30 seller. It is always going to be there unless you decrease the amount of tap handles you have. The way the comparison I make for a food menu is like at a Buffalo Wild Wings. Salads are never going to be our top seller. It's a Buffalo Wild Wings. But you have salads there for a reason, because it drives, and it might drive a transaction that wasn't there before. It's your veto vote. It's the same way that I look at our beer lineup, and why I think people didn't give us much credit for having 30 tap handles on before, because it was what I talked about. It was 30 taps, but really just basically 6 beers on tap. So that's what we've been trying to do with, the right beer for the right guest on the right occasion, is make sure that those 30 taps are optimized, and bring on a sour, bring on a saison, bring on a imperial stout, bring on some different styles that you wouldn't expect to see at a B-Dubs. So that we're really kind of making sure we're covering the bases and giving all guests what they want when they come in.
All right, these last minutes, I want to touch on a couple things quick. I need some pairings from you. The chef in me and the certified Cicerone, I'm always looking for amplifying profiles, right? And then I want to talk about education because that is such a struggle. But what are a couple things? I'm going to Buffalo Wild Wings. You know me, high standards. I'm gonna put you to the test. What's the saison with the wing that I need to have first? And then what are a couple others that I need to make sure and get myself into that you're really digging?
There we go. So shout out to Saison DuPont. They were a new man. Yeah, classic Saison style, and we just put them on tap now or on bottle nationally, so you can get a Saison DuPont at most your B-dubs that you go to. I'm gonna say lemon pepper dry rub is gonna be your solid pairing there. I mean, you can't.
That's perfect. Lemon and pepper are literally profiles of DuPont. So
it's a little too matchy, maybe, but you know what? I'm going to go for it. I'm going to say that's going to be a good pairing for you. So
I think as long as they can amplify, I think it's good. If they're at the same level, like then it's a little like washed out. But if one kind of pulls and pushes, I'm into it. I'm with you.
Yeah, cool.
All right. What a couple more.
Well, let's see. Let's go through some of our wing sauces. I'm trying to think. Do you have a favorite wing sauce or dry rub at a B-dubs or?
No, okay. Dude, all of them. Whatever somebody tells me is the thing that I need to eat that day, I do it. Like I'm so not the one to be like, hey, what's the thing that I want? I always want whatever the people tell me because I truly believe that the people that are closest to the sun are always the ones that know what they need to know. And so
there you go.
I always take people's recommendations, even if my return on investment in that is lower than if I just chose it myself. It's important to me to like empower the people because the next thing we're going to talk about is education for just a moment. I want them to be educated and have the confidence to tell me what they think, and I'm with them all the way.
All right. Well, then two other pairings. So honey barbecue is one of our most popular sauces that we have. Yep. And so for a honey barbecue, you can't go wrong with a good multi-amber lager. So, you know, whether you go classic and go with a Sam Adams Boston lager, go with maybe a New Belgium Fat Tire amber ale, you know, you're going to be solid going in with a good amber red ale or red lager with that honey barbecue. And then, you know, I gave love to our burger platform earlier. I'm going to give love to our new hand breaded chicken platform. So we make beer batter fresh in our sports bars every day, and we hand batter our chicken tenders and our chicken sandwiches to order. And that hand batter the beer breaded products are just going to go perfect with, you know, any kind of Pilsner, something with like a touch of noble hops that's going to have a little bit of spicy character to it. It's going to pair really nicely with the pepperiness of the beer batter. So yeah, I would say, you know, try one of those new hand breaded chicken items and pair it with a nice spicy Pilsner.
Ooh, I like it. I like that we got kind of something avant-garde with lemon pepper and the DuPont classic with honey barbecue, and then kind of that malty amber. And then I like that. I like, you know, Saws or something like earthy and like peppery. Makes a lot of sense with something like that. Clearly, people, we could do this all day long. I think the next time Jason and I need to get together and maybe get our buddy, you know, maybe we do this in Atlanta next time where you guys are based.
There you go.
Woolley, who's with Inspire Brands as well, out there in the test kitchen doing big things. I'm sure everything you're talking about right now, him and his team have been a part of creating those. And I think I need to eat these. We need to interact with these. We are completely missing the mark because right now I'm starving.
Dave is making waves, man. We got a new menu coming out in September that is going to blow your mind.
I saw it. I like it. I like that there's innovation at this level. I think it's super important because too long multi-unit was just white noise. There just wasn't any innovation happening around that space, and I think it's happening now. Education, so important as an industry. We really struggle at educating and empowering our people and giving them the confidence to know what they need to know and be able to communicate that to our guests, to be able to execute that again and again and again, time and time again. Your ethos, when you think about education, what are you really trying to distill in, you know, your beer tenders, the people that are on the other side of the equation, actually bringing that product and that experience to the guest?
Yeah, a few things. Taste your products that you have on tap. You got to be familiar with what's on tap, and you got to develop a favorite. You know, if someone comes up to your table or up to your bar top and says, "Hey, what's good on tap?" You need to be able to say, "Hey, these are the 2 or 3 beers that I really like. This is what's local," and then to even expand on that a little more. Excuse me. Is buzzwords. You know, how do we make beer approachable to someone who is just getting into beer, may not be 21 yet, or may just be getting into their beer and craft beer journey. So how do we break flavors down into buzzwords that are really approachable to someone who's just getting into it?
What are a couple of the buzzwords right now that you're really trying to instill so they kind of understand? They have the dialogue. They can talk the talk, and if they've tasted the product, they can walk the walk. They really understand. And again, I'm a professional, like on the food and beer side, and I'm still going to come to you and say, what do you think? Because I want the experience, because you're in it. You know the kind of experience that you can give me. I want the human experience as much as I want the beer and the food. So to the point you just made, I'm going to ask you what you think is best. So what are some of the buzzwords? What's exciting right now for you?
Yeah, so I mean, you know, we're just getting ready to launch a Kolsch nationwide. So if I'm thinking of how we're trying to, yeah, it's a fantastic beer. But if I'm thinking about what I'm trying to have our servers, you know, how to describe a Kolsch to a guest who may not be familiar with a Kolsch, you know, beyond just saying, you know, it's similar to a light lager, but with a little bit more flavor. You know, I want them to say, you know, it's crisp. It's got a little bit of a citrus flavor to it. Very clean finish. That's it. That's all they need to know. If you can say that to a guest, then you've probably got a leg up on most of the other places who are serving other products. So, you know, it's the same if you're talking about IPAs. You know, we're talking, you know, piney. We're talking citrusy. You know, we want to remove words like hoppy. We want to talk a little bit more into more traditional kind of culinary buzzwords, and what are the flavor profiles you're going to get out of the beer that you're going to try. And if you can teach a server, a bartender, a front of house team member, you know, anywhere from 20 to 30 buzzwords, but then teach them how to apply that across different categories, you've got a decent win there. So, but I think first comes with, you know, trying the beer, and then after you taste that beer, being able to pull out those buzzwords and be able to kind of describe them to the guests. So.
Yeah. And the last thing I would say that I think is important, and I'm sure that this is something for you too, ask questions. The better that you are at asking questions of your guests to kind of get out of them what they need from you, and then be able to kind of plug and play into like, all right, I get you, I feel you, I understand you. From what you're saying, here's kind of what you need. And so that's a level of hospitality that I think is super important.
Yeah.
And too often missed at every single level. But I know that for you, again, you're empowering them. Ask questions. Yes. Sophie, you're on top of it. Ask questions 100%. Jason, I really appreciate you being on. I'm excited about the work that you're doing. It's great to hear that, you know, a company like Buffalo Wild Wings, which is massive, has 1,300 locations, is thoughtfully curating its beer list, because I think it's important, and, you know, it's creating more and more opportunities for people on the hospitality side, on the beer side, to produce what they love and do what they do. And like you said, you know, Buffalo Wild Wings can also be a breeding ground for the future of hospitality, beer professionals, for sure. So I think you're helping lead the way. So Jason Murphy, Beverage Innovation Manager, Buffalo Wild Wings. He's down in Castle Rock. They are based in Atlanta. Thank you for being on the show.
Thanks, Jensen. I appreciate it, man.
All right, Jason, have a great day. Cheers.
Have a good one.
All right, everyone. Best served, what was this channel? Sophie, throw it on the screen so I know what we're doing here. Best served fast. There we go. Best served fast, where we focus on fast casual multi-unit, ghost kitchen, franchise, growth concepts, right? Clearly Buffalo Wild Wings is that. I love that we got to go down the caveat also of craft beer, something that to me is absolutely a part of my mission in life, for sure. So thank you to Jason for being on. And now I need some beer and wings. Appreciate it. Beer, wings, sports, I think is such a great moniker for a company. All right, that's it for today. Appreciate you all as always. Cheers.